G'day guys, and today we're going to be discussing the issue of domestic violence in Australia, specifically the Let's Stop It at the Start campaign that was run a few years back. So a few years ago, the Australian public was privy to a larger ad campaign targeting mainly men about domestic violence, saying, hey, it's not okay and that sort of thing. And this all came about when Malcolm Turnbull managed to get into the Prime Ministership and he pledged $100 million to this initiative. The Let's Stop It at the Start campaign ran many ads like the one you're about to see.
Come on, you're okay.
Yeah, I know, Mum. It's just what boys do.
Our excuses allow violence against women to grow. Let's stop it at the start. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
It's just what boys do. Now, of course, this is a pretty hideous stereotype of boys, and it also exposes the double standard in which it's totally okay to make group collectivist statements about boys, but totally not okay to do the same concerning women, as we've seen with the #LikeAGirl video campaign.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you some actions to do. Just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh, God.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it, because it's working. Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
Unfortunately, nowadays, double standards between men and women are pretty par for the course. Essentially what this campaign is trying to say is that domestic violence starts with disrespect towards women, and this can begin at a very early age. Now this is a pretty extraordinary claim, and as we know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Although it appears the researchers behind this campaign aren't very forthcoming with their citations. This is where we encounter Senator David Leyonjelm, where you will see many clips of him throughout the rest of the video. He formed several legislation committees, of which the clips are from the third one, trying to get citations from the researchers behind the Let's Stop It at the Start campaign.
That campaign, and I asked in particular about the research that informed it. That research was undertaken by the TNS consultancy, and it stated, without giving any citations, and I quote here, "There is strong community support for the cessation of extreme violence against women. A significant barrier to achieving this change, however, is low recognition of the heart of the issue and where it begins. There is a clear link between violence towards women and attitudes of disrespect and gender inequality."
So here we have the thesis of the Let's Stop It at the Start campaign. There is a clear link between disrespect towards women and domestic abuse of women, and that the disrespect of women and the fact that there's gender inequality is the heart of the issue behind domestic violence in Australia.
And I'm assuming that the department is not intending to argue that these statistics are measures of disrespect or gender inequality, or show that disrespect and gender inequity are at the heart of the issue.
Senator, the campaign is based on a range of research, including international and domestic research, including the World Health Organisation, preventing intimate partner and sexual violence against women, taking action and generating evidence.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious they're avoiding the question here. It's pretty standard yes or no. Are you saying that disrespect towards women is driving domestic abuse in Australia? Instead of a simple one-word answer, we get this wave of unnecessary information.
Are you arguing that the WHO report indicates that of all the factors, gender inequality is the heart of the issue?
No, in the campaign we don't argue that gender inequality and disrespectful behaviour is at the heart of the issue. It is one of the contributing factors, and the COAG decision when the campaign was commissioned supported that premise. However, it's not the only contributing factor to violence against women.
So it appears here we have a retreat from their original thesis. Disrespect towards women is not the heart of the issue, it is only a significant one. Well, if it's only one of the contributing factors, why are you focusing only on it? There's so much you could be talking about. Imagine you got in an enormous car crash and your car had several problems wrong with it. Busted tyres, cracked windscreen, all that sort of stuff. You go in there and you fix the tyres. You claim that your car is fixed, but your engine block still has an enormous crack in it and you're leaking coolant all over the place. You obviously haven't fixed the car. Why are you only focusing on the tyres?
What else does the WHO report suggest is responsible for violence against women?
I actually don't have the full details of that report with me, Senator. I'd have to take that on notice.
She can't even say what the other contributing factors are. Even if you don't have the report to hand, surely you can remember at least one other factor. And there are many, many factors outlined in this WHO report. First up, we have individual factors, which include low income, low education, sexual abuse, parental violence, antisocial personality, harmful use of alcohol, illicit drug use, and acceptance of violence. We also have relationship factors, multiple partners, fidelity issues, and the low resistance to peer pressure. We also have community factors, in which you have weak community sanctions, as in no one cares if you beat your wife, and also issues of poverty. Lastly, we also have societal factors, which include traditional gender norms and social norms supportive of violence. Please note that in none of these sets of factors does it mention gender inequality as being a key contributor. How this report can be cited as evidence for an ad campaign that solely claims that disrespect for women drives domestic violence, I cannot say. But when you're highly ideological, as most modern feminists are, and surely it is feminists behind this campaign, you can be astounded by the mental gymnastics you are capable of performing. Senator Leyonjelm then asks of what import disrespect towards women was given in this WHO report.
Senator, I'm not aware it gave it any greater importance in that research, but it is once again one of the contributing factors, which is why the campaign has focused on it.
That statement marks another significant step back from her original premise. The issue of disrespect against women has gone from the heart of the issue to merely an issue of no greater import than many of the other factors presented in the WHO report. She acknowledges that disrespect and gender inequality were not given extra import. So why is the campaign focusing on this issue to the avoidance of all others? Senator Leyonjelm then goes on to introduce another source cited by the TNS consultancy, a Vic Health survey.
And on the survey, did the survey compare the contribution of disrespect and gender inequality to violence against women against other factors like poverty, alcohol abuse and drug abuse?
Sorry, Senator, you're referring to the ABS survey?
No, the Vic Health survey that you cited in your response to my question on notice. The lead author was named as Anita Harris.
I'd have to take that on notice.
I have to take that on notice.
She can't even answer if there was a comparison of contributive factors. It is obvious now the opportunistic misandry that went into this ad campaign. There were many factors contributing to domestic violence. However, none of them could be laid solely at the feet of men, so they merely cherry-picked disrespect and gender inequality towards women. You can't lay the issue of domestic violence at the feet of women, and this breaks the narrative. It's all men's fault. Men bad, women good. So of course they can't compare factors, because of what if their chosen factor was of very little import? They just tarred men as inherently misogynistic, and that's far easier to do.
That survey, which you cited as a source for a reference source for to underpin the Violence Against Women campaign, it states that it is an area of concern that only 60% of young people agree that violence against women is common. So that raises the question, can you definitively say that violence against women is common?
The research, the 2013 National Community Attitudes Survey found a strong relationship between attitudes to gender equality and attitudes in violence, and some of the research showed that 1 in 4 young people is prepared to excuse partner violence, and 1 in 5 believes there are circumstances in which a woman bears some responsibility for the violent behaviour. That research formed the basis of the primary prevention approach for the campaign when we targeted influences of 10 to 17-year-old children.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. Just avoid the question again. Do you believe this premise that I have outlined? Where you see, we did all this other stuff and it was really good. Why can't they answer the question? I think we all know why. Because they can't answer it without losing face.
I guess the question, though, is violence against women common? And if it's not common, and if there's this perception that it isn't common, then you could hardly expect young people to say that it is. And I mentioned that because the most recent ABS personal safety survey indicates that 1.5% of women reported experiencing violence by a partner or ex-partner during the previous 12 months. So 1.5%, I mean, I suppose depends on your definition, but I'm not sure that that would qualify from my definition of common.
So there you have it, the actual rate of domestic violence that necessitated $100 million of government funding. 1.5% is hardly epidemic. And of course, it's difficult to know how many false accusations may be in that total. Ultimately, propaganda breeds propaganda. If a frenzy is whipped up, then of course you need another campaign to provide a, quote, solution, and this of course necessitates more funding from the government. How revealing the link to money can be. Some people's livelihood, their very survival, depends on their ability to fearmonger to the public. We see this in craptivist groups, in think tanks, especially in the media. Now pay attention to this next response, it's rather interesting. Remember, the rate of abuse is 1.5%.
Certainly more than is preferable, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Indeed it is.
And instantly, we see the knee-jerk reaction of, are you saying the 1.5% rate is acceptable? This is a common sophist tactic, which unfortunately necessitates a response in today's dialogue. Senator Leyonjelm parries and returns masterfully, however, clearly stating that violence against women is nothing more than something to be avoided, whilst also returning to his thesis of how this is a waste of taxpayer funds. The obvious question, of course, is how much more effective could the campaign have been if we had addressed a multifaceted causal theory of domestic violence rather than just men bad, women good? This is ultimately, however, difficult to determine with any certainty.
I'm not going anywhere on this by suggesting violence against women is acceptable or desirable or anything other than something to be avoided. But what I am questioning is the commitment of taxpayers' funds to a program for which the suggestion was, as I raised last estimates, the fundamental assumption is there a clear link between violence towards women and attitudes of disrespect and gender inequality. How much more successful could you have
Senator,
been?
We can't possibly take a hypothetical thing that we didn't do and then have a look what it might have had an outcome. It's not possible to do that.
No, I appreciate that. But what I'm suggesting to you is that there is a danger, and I'm suspicious that you have selectively taken the evidence rather than taken it as a whole. And when Ms Bell has said there's a considerable amount of evidence, I hope you have given us the evidence, or given me the evidence, in response to my question at the last estimates, in response to my question on notice. If there is other evidence that I haven't received that underpins the basis of that campaign, I would like to see it.
Senator, can I say we will go and further explore whether there's any other source of evidence that
was used.
Yeah, sorry, David. We'll get the evidence to you another time. I feel the need to point out that this is actually the third time they've sat down to discuss this issue of citations, but they still need time to get all their evidence. These cunts get paid to waste time like this.
Yeah, that'd be good. I would like to know, because what you've sent me so far does not do it justice, in my view, and I suspect that the program is misdirected, and it could be more successful if it was redirected. Now, a final question, because the Chair is going to wind me up in a moment. I'm just wondering if you agree that the literature on partner violence splits into two camps. They are referred to as the patriarchal perspective and the family conflict perspective. Is that a reasonable assessment? You're familiar with that idea?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm not. It hasn't formed any of the part of the work we've done for the campaign. It may be in a program or policy.
I might put a question on notice for you for that one. That might be a bit a bit unfair. Okay, all right, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
So there you have it. They haven't even considered how they were looking at the situation. Who's the main contributor to the problem? Is it just men, or women involved in it too? That's a pretty important question to ask, in my amateur opinion. Now, if it's very obviously a patriarchal problem, then great, proceed with your research, but if you don't at least try to look for all the sources, you'll never get the complete picture. I also feel the need to point out, kind of cynically, that they definitely knew they were looking at it in a generically men-bad way, but they just fucking lied about it to cover their asses. Now, this issue, even though it's a few years old, still bears great import today. The money handed out to these groups to lie about men, essentially, is about to run out. The $100 million paycheck is almost gone, and they'll be desperate to grab a new one, as I said, to sustain their own livelihoods. Now, if I had to hedge my bets, I would predict the Morrison government to give them a second round of funding. The Morrison government, the Liberal Party in general, has shown a reluctance to fight back against rampant feminism within the courts, within the lawmaking system, within the money they hand out to people, obviously, because they don't want to alienate female voters. Now, they're already on the back foot because Labor has pushed, women this, women that quite hard, and they're edging ahead in the polls, so they don't want to slip. It's already going to be a really, really tough election for them this year, actually, so they don't want to rock the boat too much. What really adds insult to injury is that it will primarily be male taxpayers contributing to this fund that will be handed out to outright slander them. Yeah, it's going to be a wonderful time. Just shut the fuck up, eat your soybeans, never criticize women, men bad, women good, and all that sort of thing. Thanks all for sticking around, and have a good one.